the background for this really was, we looked at the SORO report, the State of Online Retailing report, and no surprise really to us, the top thing that folks are thinking about is, most retailers are going to focus on optimizing their on-site experience. It's still a huge, huge issue. And as it turns out, some of the top things that they're looking at, like improving their user experience, the checkout optimization, product detail page enhancement, these are all key areas where hopefully personalization can play a role. And so we wanted to kind of really zoom in on those areas and discuss some of those in the context of Hayneedle and Baynote. So before we jump into that, I'll just take a second to introduce Baynote. If you don't know us, we're a leader in the personalization space, really an innovator. We created a category called social search, and we're really different from a lot of other folks out there that do recommendations in that we didn't start out to build a product recommendation engine. We started out to build a content personalization engine. And so therefore, we have a lot of customers who don't do product recommendations. We support search enhancement. We do landing pages. We do, of course, product recommendations, category recommendations. We have a number of support sites where we help find related or relevant support articles for folks. So a lot of things that we're doing with our personalization platform that are not product related. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of product related things, but I just didn't want you to think that that's all that we do. Of course, we have a number of great customers. You can see some of them up on the slide, like Urban Outfitters, Uncommon Goods, 3M, and Bluefly, and not the least of which is Hayneedle.
Thanks, Dan. To quickly ground everybody in who Hayneedle is, it helps to start at the beginning. As a company, we started with one site, hammocks.com. And our objective was to be the best place on the planet to sell hammocks, or to buy a hammock, actually. And so we went out and we got the domain hammocks.com. We went out and we started sourcing hundreds of different styles of hammocks versus what you could get in a brick and mortar store or in some of the other options that customers had where they could really only find 2 or 3 options. And we went out and value priced all of those products. And we built around it a shopping experience with all of the filtering and options for shopping that a customer would expect. And we found that to be very successful. It connected with customers. Customers who came to hammocks.com and bought a hammock said, "Oh my gosh, that was the best experience I could have ever imagined for buying a hammock." And we started to build on this concept, and we found that it was scalable. And we began to build out other sites, like barstools.com, clubchairs.com, cribs.com as we got into juvenile, exercisebikes.com. And before you knew it, we're 5 years into this and we have 200+ stores that are all built around a single product. And by 2009, we realized that we needed a brand to go over the top of everything that we were selling and offer customers the ability to understand that we had a depth of assortment across products that would work together. And so we launched the Hayneedle brand, and we found ourselves in the position of being now a mass merchant in the home goods space. And we found that we had a new challenge. The challenge of selling a single product and being the very best at that single product was much different than being the expert across a whole solution of products for the home. And we became so self-aware of this challenge that we actually put it in the name of our company. And Hayneedle, if you think about it, our whole mission is to expose products that go together in such a way that we help customers find that needle in the haystack. And that is a serious challenge when you have 1 million SKUs and you have assortment across all sorts of styles and all kinds of price points. It's not as easy in our business to define ourselves as maybe a Pottery Barn, which is very defined, maybe that French country in a certain price point. As a brand, we have all across the styles. And that's how I got here today, in a partnership with Baynote to solve some of those problems.
Yep. So as you think about this, we think back to the SORO report, and we've talked about this a number of times, but I think people have an idea of what they think personalization is, and we're obviously going to show you some of those things. But does personalization really help you convert customers, or are there other things that you do with it?
Well, when you go to the Soro report now, it says that the primary thing that retailers are going to focus on is conversion enhancement. That's the #1 objective. And I think we've all been very much keyed in on that KPI for a long time. That doesn't seem like a new insight to me. Mm-hmm. But as we talk about personalization and recommendations, I think it's more about engagement. You have these customers coming to your site, and you have 3 to 5 seconds for that customer to decide that they've arrived at the right location to actually shop for the product they've come to look for. Am I in the right place? And so you need to really establish relevancy, which leads to engagement. And that's where personalization on our site has been critical. As we've worked with Baynote, one of the reasons we partnered with Dan here and the Baynote team was because we found that they had an interesting technology. They're built around a term space. He mentioned that early in their life cycle that they did a lot of content personalization. Well, those keywords that are coming in on the search string actually prove to be very useful in understanding intent of the customer and then building a landing location that's highly relevant to that customer so that we can maintain them on the site. So that where we put those recommendations and personalization zones on our site, those landing pages get 45 to 65% greater engagement. And once a customer engages with a personalized zone, we're 2 times more likely to convert that customer.
Yeah, and I think, as I look at this, what I found really interesting is the way you guys are using basically category recommendations. I mean, how many categories do you guys have on the site?
Well, we have thousands of categories, approaching 10,000 categories for our million SKUs.
So what you're actually seeing here in the example is not a product recommendation, but a category recommendation, filtering that down to the right categories that someone might be interested in, which I think is a great use of personalization technology.
Yeah, when we look at how we engage those customers, we do a lot of A/B testing to understand what's the right way to get them engaged in that experience. One of the things that we've found is that if you come straight at a customer who's landing your site for the very first time and you come at them with a lot of, with a group of products, with prices and all the content around those products, that's a little overwhelming. And if they don't connect with those exact products that you've displayed, then they may not be engaged. Whereas if you give them categories that are relevant, they say, oh yeah, they have the categories I want to shop. They can solve the problem I have, and they're more likely to click through and find out on the next page what it is in that category that we have to offer. And so that becomes a much better way to engage them. That then becomes an additional signal to us about that customer and how we would market to that customer, what category did they engage in. So each click is a new signal for us to understand that customer and to make that experience more relevant and help guide them to that perfect product.
Yeah, and so you can think of it, you've got landing pages, you've got category pages, you've got your home page, you've got lots of different ways to kind of guide people through. And then they click through and they end up on a product page, right? So then how do you personalize a product page? And it's a little different, right, in how you approach it.
Well, obviously, I think everybody here in this room is probably aware that the product detail page offers a lot of opportunities for personalization. It's a page where, here we show a product detail page, maybe a little hard to see, I apologize for that, but we've got alternatives or substitutes in zone 1 there, perfect accessories in zone 2, and then suggested cross-sell product categories in zone 3 there. And those are 3 examples, and they're not the only examples of what you can illuminate on a product page, but all of them offers great opportunities. One of the things that we've found in usability testing with some of our customers is that when you provide alternatives on the product page, making that a navigational element, you actually can get customers to go product to product rather than to a product from a result list back to a result list, to a product back to a result list. That proves to be very inefficient. Using this sort of alternative zone actually creates an opportunity for you to show more products because those page views that they would have wasted going back to a page they've already seen, they use moving forward. The net result is a customer is much more likely to discover the product that they were actually seeking after having seen more products and more options. Each one of those alternative zones then becomes has the ability now to hone in more on what that customer is looking for and become more precise in its recommendation. When you look at accessories with 1 million products, we used to, in the good old days of hammocks.com, manually accessorize every product and hand pick every accessory. That's really not possible with 1 million products anymore in the catalog. So at this point, from an efficiency standpoint, we actually have gone to the perfect accessories being supplied by Baynote. And that actually, what's been really exciting about it is not only are they very tight recommendations, but when one product goes out of stock, it's automatically replaced with the next best product. And so we continue to offer the right product. And then suggestions for you is really just an opportunity to say that we can complete the whole solution. And I'll talk to that a little more on the next slide here.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, now we're moving down the funnel. We get people to add to cart. And this is, I think, a key area for everyone. And it's really interesting to see what are some of the things you guys have learned with personalization and even with just cart management about how to improve conversion and engagement there.
Yeah, when you look at the add to cart interaction, this is where Amazon really pioneered the high upsell cart, and we use a couple of techniques on our add to cart interaction to expose the customers to, you might call it the candy aisle, the perfect accessories here. At this point, we're really trying to re-expose those accessories that are going to be the right things to complete the solution with the customer. One thing that I would suggest, in the rush to optimize for conversion, sometimes we grease the slide just a little too much. And so taking that extra opportunity to look at where you can benefit your average order value, where you can benefit your units per transaction, there's some real opportunities. The second that customer adds an item to cart, you've now got a customer who's very interested, likely to proceed to checkout. You've got someone who's actually looking to make a decision and solve a problem. Here's the chance to give them everything that they need to put together to solve that problem. We also use the suggestions for you, which is more a broader solution for that customer, showing them assortment that we have around the product, things that they might be doing. If they're sprucing up their backyard, a hammock may not be the only thing they're looking for. They may be looking for yard games, other things of that nature that we would show here, other relaxing furniture. If they seem to be like relaxing, maybe there's other things that they would do. But the thing that I would point out here is the real opportunity sometimes is not even in closing those sales. If you can get another signal from that customer about what might be the next thing on their mind and get that into your decision-making tree, you can now use that as a marketing cue for a follow-up with the customer. So a lot of times this suggestions for you is not to add an item to the transaction, it's to add a data point that's going to give us an insight that we can use to market with this customer later in potentially a second purchase opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you get an opportunity to show them other complementary items. These things, it's not the candy aisle or the the inexpensive item. You're not really expecting to add to cart, but you know that they might be coming back, they're filling in a living room, or they're working on their backyard, as you said, and these are some other options of things that you sell. And then when they start thinking about, oh, we could really use some furniture for the backyard, oh, I remember I saw that on Hayneedle, so I think that's a great option.
When you look at that building that lifetime value for a customer and building a long-term relationship, it's actually that second purchase that has the highest hurdle that we've found. Once you get them past the second purchase 3 and 4 and 5 and N are much easier to achieve. It's that second purchase that really makes a commitment. The customer's trying you out on the first purchase. The second purchase, they're actually committing to a relationship with you as a retailer and saying, this is a place I like to shop. I really enjoy shopping here. And so I can't emphasize enough, make sure that you give yourself the cues in your system to understand what the second purchase might be. When you look at that second purchase, 30 days is kind of your window for that second purchase. There's a very steep declining opportunity past 30 days for a customer to get that second purchase, at least in our business. Obviously, you should test that in your own business and confirm it with your own data. But that's what we've found, and so we focus a lot on making sure that we not only get this first sale, but an opportunity to understand what's next in the customer's mind.
Yeah, so when you think about that, now you've got somebody who potentially is thinking about the next purchase, and then they come back to the site, and they know you, so they're not necessarily searching, so they might even come back to your home page. And really the next thing we thought to talk about was, okay, what do you do then? This is now kind of they're not an unknown user, they're not anonymous anymore. You do have some knowledge of what they might be interested in. So how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, we tend to segment customers once they've purchased. We take that data that we've collected about that customer and we segment them into cohorts. We understand that they have an interest area. You know, we sell with 1 million products. There's a lot of things that we sell. We find that our juvenile and baby goods don't appeal to everybody. Pet only works if the customer actually has a pet. And so these very basic insights, we use them to group them into cohorts where we know they have an interest. If they've purchased something for their backyard, we now know that they have a backyard. There's an opportunity to promote other products that go in the backyard. And hopefully we've gotten one of those contextual clues from that earlier experience to understand what we can do with this customer. And so once we've developed those cohorts, you know, we're then going to go after that customer when they come back to our site. On our homepage experience, we're going to be able now to talk to that customer in a much more intelligent way. So one of the things we've found is you look at the homepage experience, customers oftentimes feel when we've done one-on-one in-depth interviews with customers, they say, every time I come back to the site, I'm always starting over. And so we came up with an experience that we designed with Baynote where we built this related to what you've recently viewed. And we started testing this module out. It takes a lot of our normal things that we establish on our homepage, where we're trying to establish what our breadth of our assortment is. We were a little worried initially this is going to detract from the assortment that we have and establishing with the customer what type of retailer we are. So we initially put this at the bottom of the page, but customers found it. And then as we started testing further, no matter where we pushed this zone, customers found this zone and interacted with it. They liked the ability to get to where they had left off. And so what we provided was what was the very last product they looked at and what were 4 alternatives to that product that they might want to consider. We found that the engagement rate was well over 10% with customers who returned to the homepage. They would find this and interact with it. Once they interacted with this, we were 2 to 3 times more likely to convert that customer further down in the funnel. So as you think about the homepage as well, we're looking at these top zones as personalization zones as well. So we've actually established a bit of a hierarchy here in terms of just size of those zones. And so what we know from that customer can drive which product categories are populated into those zones, and we would populate them with some intelligence that says this is the most likely one for them to interact with, and use a little predictive intelligence to make sure that we get those product categories that they're likely to engage with there. And there's always going to be some elements to understand, again, is there an interest in another product category that may not necessarily have been predicted? So there's some elements of that that would be random.
And I think that could be personalized or it could be geo-based, right? Because you definitely see some differences in geography and what's hot or what's interesting in a specific geo area, right?
Yeah, as good as we were at selling hammocks in the hammocks.com days, one of the things that we found is that when you look at these predictive data points to understand a customer's behavior, there's some pretty interesting stuff. When you look at hammocks, we will tend to feature one main feature, that whatever is the seasonally hot item, then a couple of sub features, and then alternative options for hammocks. But what we've found is that through geolocation, you can actually resort those to present the right options just to make it real. You know, you think about customers in the Northeast, we find they're likely to buy a quilted hammock. In California, much more likely to buy a rope hammock that breathes. In Miami, customers like to put their hammocks by the pool, and so they tend to buy our quick dry hammock. And so you start to understand pretty quickly that when you layer on many more data points, you can actually get very precise with those customers and get a much higher probability of meeting that customer's need by bringing the right feature forward.
And so for even an anonymous user, someone you've never seen before, if they're coming into hammocks or the hammocks category, now you have an opportunity to personalize for them content, even though you don't know anything about that individual, you know where they're coming from and potentially what kind of products people are interested in that area. So this is someone who came back kind of organically to your site. But what do you do with personalization for the people who don't come back on their own, and how do you re-engage those folks and drive them back in?
Yeah, well, we definitely have many tools, and we do abandoned cart emails. We use techniques like save cart and email product to engage us with that customer, get their email address so that we can talk to that customer some more. If we recognize them, then certainly we're going to, take the opportunity to, instead of send them a blanket email, we have the same sort of blanket campaigns that everybody has that they send out to their customers. We tend to replace those with personalized emails whenever we can, because there's much higher engagement in those relevant communications. So this particular email is actually one where we don't know a lot about this customer. We've only got a high-level cohort. So we'll actually give them the product categories back that are most relevant to them based on the category they engaged with when they were on site. This is likely a customer who didn't start a cart. So this is a little bit higher in the funnel. We don't know yet what they're looking for. On the next slide here, we have an email that's actually one where the customer is engaged in a product and maybe many products around a particular assortment. And now with these bird baths, we're actually saying, here are 6 bird baths that we've handpicked for you. In essence, we have done that. We've looked at the data points on our site that tell us what this customer is likely to purchase, and now we're giving them the best options for them based on what we know about that customer. These tend to be very successful, and like I said, we always try to replace a blanket email with one of these if we have enough data about the customer to follow up with them, because this is really your opportunity. The open rate and click rate are 2.5 times higher on both of those factors, and then 2 to 3 times higher on conversion once they come to the site.
So now you've driven them back to the site with items that you understand that they care about, and it's interesting because you're not showing price, for example, here, right?
Yeah, again, we're always looking to get that customer through to the site. If the customer shops an email and says, I'm not interested right now, if you give them too much data where they don't actually have to come to the site to learn a little bit more, then you've lost that opportunity to get that predictive data point that's going to help you get to the next step with the customer. So if they didn't click through here, they might actually be really interested in number 2, but if the price wasn't quite right for them, okay, close that email, I'm not going through. Here they would say, ooh, I really like that second one. Click, get through to that product detail page, and now we have a data point that says, okay, this product is interesting to the customer. If we get another data point that says, they didn't add that product to cart, and then they started looking at lower priced items, maybe a promotion or some other trigger is what we need to get this customer over the hurdle. So we also find that it is helpful to put promotional triggers, limited sale pricing, limited time pricing, limited availability. Those types of triggers help customers take action. So we combine those sort of messages in there as well.
So you've improved conversion on the site. You're driving more revenue. But that can have some unintended consequences. And I think one of our great conversation points was, now what happens? Now you're going to feed the acquisition beast on the front end. And you had a really interesting viewpoint on this and what that can do to your site.
Yeah, well, measuring success is important, obviously, for all of us. And one of the things that I've found over time, with 15 years of experience on trying to optimize conversion every year, like the Soro report suggests that we all do, we find that conversion is a very hard number to move. And through many years of experience, I've started to understand why that is, and it's pretty obvious, actually. Our good friends in advertising tend to manage their side of the business around an ad cost percent. So typically what happens here is you go out and do your good job of optimizing conversion. You start to drive more marketing contribution with your higher conversion. The advertising folks on the other side of the house say, well, we can now pour more dollars into advertising because we've got some more marketing contribution here. The models all start to say that they can push a little harder. They push on the gas. They tend to bring in the next marginal traffic into the funnel, the traffic that they wouldn't have exposed or been able to afford to bring to the site previously. Increases your sessions. You see that session increase, and you always know with that session increase, there's a likely conversion decrease as your session quality goes down. And your sessions erode conversion, and you end up back here at optimizing conversion and explaining to your boss why conversion, after the 6 months of projects you just invested in, is still exactly the same as it was when you started. And so one of the things that you have to have ways to measure your conversion and understand your impact. It's usually not going to be through that top KPI of conversion, because you're going to have other factors that are going to drive that conversion to an equilibrium. And so you tend to end up back at that equilibrium. What you'll also find is that oftentimes many changes make it difficult and mask which change is actually benefiting you. So oftentimes if you do have a benefit to conversion, there'll be a little bit of a debate about which project actually had that, contributed to that effort. So I would suggest that you invest in a good A/B testing solution, that you always segment off a control for each one of these types of implementations that you're doing, and then measure them apples to apples. How are we doing when we don't use these recommendations versus when we do? And all of the metrics that we've shown here in this presentation are arrived at by actually doing that type of methodology.
So wrapping up, I mean, we talked about some key things that we thought folks could take away from this session. So you touched on the A/B testing one, but I think you had some other thoughts.
Yeah, well, definitely if you're not using personalization, it's a must. It's table stakes at this point. It's an ante to be in the game. You have to have recommendations because customers are going to quickly move away to a retailer that's going to offer them more relevant content. And so you can't afford to not be in this space. There's also really quick incremental wins, low-hanging fruit that allows you to pretty much, just adding product recommendations to a product page can usually add 3 to 5% to your growth. And we're all looking for those short-term wins. But I think that you should also think of it as a much more a longer-term initiative where you want to go after, continually have cycles of personalization in your initiatives. We currently, as far as our roadmap goes out, we have things baked in for personalization in our roadmap to continue to improve our system and to get tighter recommendations for our customers. I had mentioned that we should definitely measure the results, get your A/B testing in line. Another thing that I would say is, as you go out and you choose a personalization vendor, you do want to make sure that you're not thinking of it as a commodity. This is really something that you want to pick a strategic partner that can help you get to the next level. As we went out and we chose Baynote, one of the things that was really important to us was that they were investing in the future, building new big data back ends for this. They're giving us access to the data scientists who have a lot bigger brains than we have. And those are the things you need to be looking at, making sure you're asking the right questions, make sure they're poised for the future, that they're continuing to develop on their product, and that their core focus is on personalization would be another thing. I've noticed that some vendors are getting distracted by other fancy widgets that they're working on and not necessarily focusing on the core of personalization and really improving that customer experience.